This podcast is not medical advice, therapy, or any form of professional treatment. It's made by someone in recovery who has ADHD, which means I can barely remember to take my own meds.
Hello. Welcome back
Hi.
to the Welcome back to the Loudness McEvil Symposium.
Thank you very much.
I'm Wendy, and I'm here with Jason, and we've sort of been in and out of like a romantic relationship with each other. We were for a while in our teens and 20s, and then took a long break from each other and have ended up back together in our, should I admit, how old
Golden
we are?
years.
Well, our golden years. Our golden years. Okay. If you love this podcast, please like and subscribe and share it with anybody that you think it might be helpful to. It is a labor of love for Jason. He gets paid $0. I can vouch for that for this podcast, and it takes a ton of time, and he works really, really hard at it. And so anything you can do to help keep this thing going by spreading the word is much, much appreciated by both of us. But I thought what we could talk about today is early recovery and some of the things that nobody tells you.
I think for my addiction, I mean, it was so long and so deep. I think at least 5 years I'll be in early recovery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after 5 years, I'll probably feel a lot more secure in my sobriety, but you know, I don't take it for granted that I'm going to be sober tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I
I mean,
know
tomorrow I think I will be, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Things can happen very quickly in recovery and turn it into a relapse. So I don't take any of that for granted.
Yeah, no, and me neither. Like, as your partner, I don't take that for granted. I think about it sometimes. I don't think about it very much. I think the fact that I'm sober from alcohol, I haven't had a drink in almost 8 years now, and I'm very happy to be alcohol free. But I do think that gives me a different perspective on all of this, and I recognize how hard it is in the first years. But I also can see in you, like I absolutely believe that you will be sober tomorrow and in 5 years and in another 5 years after that. But I also understand why it doesn't feel comfortable saying anything like that out loud at this point. So,
Well,
so
I'm
I thought,
superstitious. You know, I'm superstitious, so I don't like
I
to.
know.
I don't like to tempt the universe.
Yeah.
So
I do know
I'm,
you're
I'm
superstitious.
I'm in early recovery.
Yeah, that's cool. I think you said like for most people, early recovery is the first 5 years, and I hadn't really thought of it that way as being that, but that makes sense.
I think if
And I
people are
do,
being honest with themselves,
yeah, yeah, and I do agree that sort of the longer time you have spent in the world where the substance is running the show, probably the longer the period of early recovery would be.
sure. I mean,
Yeah,
I've heard people say that, you know, use the analogy of if you walk into the woods for 5 miles, it takes you 5 miles to get out. So, you know,
right.
however long you've been using,
Yeah,
that's how long you should consider yourself in recovery.
right.
So for
It's
me,
like,
that would mean I'll be in recovery until I'm dead, and I will be,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah. Oh,
And
absolutely.
I'm not sure if I wasn't also alcohol free, that I would love that. Like to be partnered with somebody who says something like, I think I'll be in recovery for the rest of my life, or
Right.
I'll always be an addict.
Right.
I don't love that. I respect your path to recovery, which was different than mine. And I respect all the things that are the important pillars that keep you well and healthy and sober. And a lot of them are similar to mine, but some of them are different. Lots like your withdrawal, you have to go through withdrawal with your substance of choice. I didn't have to
Yeah.
do that because I wasn't physically dependent on alcohol.
Yeah.
And frankly, like something like only 20% of heavy drinkers are actually physically dependent and experience like the
Yeah.
really like extreme withdrawal, DTs and that kind of thing.
Right.
And that's different than opioids, obviously. So there's lots of things that are different, but I do have, I think, an understanding of recovery and what the early stages of recovery feel like, and some of the common things that people think, and fears and anxieties that people have, and
Yeah.
triggers that are hard for people to deal
Yeah.
with, and all the rest of it. Like, I do have an understanding of those. So I
Yeah,
think
I
that,
don't think those change no matter
yeah,
who
yeah.
you are, like coming from the streets or coming from, a penthouse. It's all the same.
Okay, so I'm going to just start with the questions
Okay.
and we'll see how this goes. What was the hardest part about early recovery for you? Or what has been the hardest part about early recovery for you? And it might be more than one thing, but
I've tried to get sober so many times, and so in early recovery in the past, and the reason I failed, I think probably is that I just couldn't imagine never using again. So and that's why, like with the steps, one day at a time is so important. Just
well,
don't look past tomorrow. Just stay in the present, stay sober right now. But and every other time I'd ever tried to get sober, I was still in the back of my head thinking, if I can just stay sober for this long, or until my probation's over, or
yeah,
whatever it happens to be, I'm getting right back at it, and it'll be different this time.
right.
Um, and this time when I got sober, I just didn't even want that anymore. So I haven't found it that difficult this time to stay sober. What I find most difficult is looking at the world through the view of somebody who lived on the streets and trying to make sense of it,
Yeah.
because it's nonsense. There's so much nonsense that I just don't understand. Like, how are these problems? I don't get it.
Yeah. That's been really interesting for me as somebody who
Uh-huh.
does live a, like, admittedly very privileged life
Hmm.
and who has like access to the things. And I've always felt as though I didn't take that for granted, and I acknowledged like my privilege in all the ways, um, and had gratitude for what I have. But you coming back into my life with the lens that you have has really had me thinking about a lot of things in different ways than I would have before. I can also see how it would be very difficult. I mean, you live with me, and we live in a nice place, and we have good food to eat, and I see your uh uncomfortableness with some of that,
Yeah,
some of the time. Um and I know you're grateful for all of it, but I also know that it's overwhelming.
it can be. I mean, I,
Yeah.
I wasn't born on the street. I came from a family that is, what, upper middle class would they be, or middle class? I don't even know what you
Yeah.
call them. Dentist father. I wasn't born into poverty,
Mhm.
but I ended up in, like, the most poverty stricken part of society, the
Mhm.
most vulnerable. I was one of them, and then came back. Uh, so it's really strange. It's a strange feeling to have, experienced basically every side, like the whole spectrum of society at some point, right?
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And it's, I like check myself. I still say things that you'll call me on, but for example, the uncomfortableness of a bed.
Yeah.
When I comment on the uncomfortableness of a bed as a 50-something-year-old postmenopausal woman,
Yeah.
Jason Jason will say something like, "I'm just happy to have a bed,"
Yeah.
or I've slept on pavement. This is great."
Mhm. And I'm sure that
So,
gets tiresome too, for me
possibly
to
get
say that, but
no, I think it's good
I'll,
for me
I,
to remember,
yeah,
you
I
know?
don't think I'll ever not feel that way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I can survive in -30 with no blanket. So having a
Mhm.
bed under a roof, whether there's blankets or not, I will always feel like that's a blessing.
Yeah. And this isn't your first attempt at getting clean, obviously, as you said. And but this is the longest period of complete
Yeah.
continuous sobriety you've had. So that's like,
Mhm.
let's frigging celebrate that because that's amazing. Um, yay. um, what Did you think this was gonna look like versus what it looks like? It's probably not really a fair question because I think for both of us, like, the way this has all turned out has been a bit of a blindside in terms of where we both are and the fact that we, live together now and are doing a podcast together today. But,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
take that out of it, like, take us out of the equation. What were some of the surprises in this time period for you in terms of what recovery looked and felt like?
Mhm.
What did you think it was gonna look and feel like, and what was different?
I didn't know that I wasn't gonna want drugs anymore. Like,
Mhm,
that, I came home and then just never wanted to use again, but I used that day. Like, it just, it's
mhm,
very, it's miraculous and strange, and I don't really understand what happened.
yeah,
Um, I didn't know it was gonna look like that. So, yeah, I mean, it looks completely different than I expect. I mean, I
yeah,
never in my wildest dreams did I expect
yeah.
it
I
to my
think
life to
it's
be like what it's like now. It's
yeah.
fucking crazy.
I do think it's important though, 'cause, this is something
Mhm.
that, like, often happens with me. It's very different, obviously, but, like, when I decided to take a break from alcohol, I never drank again. And people always, like, will comment on that, like, "Oh, like, what's like that's like a miracle. It's like spontaneous sobriety," they call it. And I'm
Mhm.
always really careful to say to people, there was nothing spontaneous about that.
Right.
And I had been, like, going around and around the same circle for years before that. The first time I was able to get 30 days alcohol free, it wasn't the first time I'd tried.
Right.
I'd tried sober January or whatever, dry January for years, but I would get, 10 days into it and convince myself it wasn't a big deal. And
Yeah.
start drinking again. So there was nothing spontaneous about it. And for you, same thing. Like, it wasn't spontaneous in
My
that there were a couple of years before that, even after we first had that first communication when you were in rehab and you said, like, "Hey, are you still out there? Do you still not eat gluten?"
Yeah,
After
yeah.
that very first text exchange, those were a really hard couple of years, and I don't know how much
Well,
you've
I
talked.
ended up back in rehab after that rehab
You
stint.
did.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we
Mhm.
haven't really talked about that, but I think it's important to acknowledge, like, the early parts of recovery sometimes include relapse.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I went to rehab a dozen times. I mean,
Yeah,
that was just the last one. I went
yeah.
twice in 2022.
Mhm,
Um, so yeah, nothing about it was spontaneous. I
mhm.
everything I learned from every rehab I'd ever been in, every program, every detox, every person I'd met, every legal situation, I learned a lot every single time. And I guess just when I was ready, it just happened.
Yeah.
You were definitely a big part of that, when like coming home. I mean, when I came home, I knew you were going to be my friend. That's it. But
Mhm.
I mean, it still gave me something to look forward to. I was coming back here with nothing at 50, with no plan and no money. And so, I knew I wanted to stay sober. I didn't know exactly how that was going to happen, but I have a lot of tools in my toolbox thanks to, all of the different, because, I've done the 12 steps several times, but I also went to SMART. I know what CBT is. I've been to therapy many, many, many times.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, and honestly, I don't think the steps in CBT are any different, except there's a little spirituality sprinkled into the steps, but otherwise they're the exact same program. Um,
And so in the 2 years before you moved home, the
mhm.
first time you reached out to me, you were in rehab for the first time in that particular period of recovery.
Yep, I came from the hospital into directly from the hospital to rehab, and then maybe a few days later, I
Yeah,
messaged you as soon as I started to feel a bit better.
yeah. And
Mhm.
let's say 2 years or whatever it was of early like, those in my mind, those are part of your recovery. Like, I don't
Sure.
actually separate, like, when we're talking about the early years of recovery, in my mind, you're, like, kind of at year 4,
Oh,
Because those 2 years, you were serious about staying
yeah.
sober, and even though you had a couple of very, very short relapses,
Mhm.
you always went back to
Yep.
sobriety, and you worked so hard at it. So I just want to acknowledge that for anybody who's listening. It's not like Jason just moved home and suddenly felt different about sobriety and everything
No,
just changed for him, right?
no. There was a full 2 year struggle with trying to stay sober and failing at it. But but mostly succeeding, but really struggling with it. And then, like, I don't think geographic moves work. So definitely not if that's all you do. But in this case, it was kind of the last piece of the puzzle that I needed.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I spent so much time there working so hard at doing the things I needed to do to stay sober, even though I did relapse. Getting the fuck out of there was probably the best thing that I could have done.
Yeah, for sure. Because you were living a very isolated life there, just trying to
Yeah,
stay clean.
that's right. I mean, I was
Yeah.
avoiding the world just trying to so I wouldn't run into drugs out there.
Yeah.
And I was miserable,
Yeah.
totally miserable. Yeah.
So I could guess an answer to this, but I would love to hear it from you. Like, what are the biggest surprises for you in terms of how your body has recovered? So your physical body and your
Yeah.
mental, like, let's do all three: physical, mental, and emotional, because I feel like you were kind of a self-admitted wreck in all of those three areas when you were in rehab the first time when you reached out to me. Is that fair?
No, I thought I was looking great. uh, yeah, I was a wreck. I mean, mentally, it's hard for me to say. I know that I used to wake up, you know, jolted awake by anything sound or touching me. I didn't want to be touched at all. I didn't Sounds
Mhm.
frightened me in the middle of the night. I had horrible dreams. I know that's gone away, but I'm medicated now too. So that I don't know if that helps. I mean, it has to help a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the only thing. But mentally, I think I'm a lot more focused. I'm able to focus. We were talking about that earlier, right? I can
Yeah.
focus on things
Yeah.
a lot better. My
Yeah.
mind's a lot clearer, but my body is, I don't it's crazy. I mean, when before I went into rehab in that winter of 2022, I mean, I nearly lost my leg. Like, they
Mhm.
were so infected and gigantic. I wish I could explain it. I mean, my legs were weeping because the skin was stretched so tight, and then my pants would freeze to the fluid coming out of them, and
Wow.
then I'd rip skin off whenever I tried to take my pants off, kind of thing. And that was both
Yeah.
legs. So I was sick. There's no question. I was pretty underweight,
Yeah.
riddled with infection. Anytime I would get a nick on my leg, I would end up in the hospital because it would get infected again. And the last time I was in the hospital before they released me, they told me if I went back to the street, I wouldn't make it till June, and that was in February, which was obviously a big part of why I said, well, I might as well go get a nice place to sleep and some food at this rehab for a while, and then
Yeah.
I can decide if I'm going to stick with it or not. And I pretty much immediately did once I got there and started feeling better. Like, I just thought,
Yeah.
I like this. I like this a lot more than the middle of the winter on the streets.
Talk about your liver for a sec. Talk about your liver, because I think your Jason's body is a miracle to me. And it's not always like this, so I don't want to pretend like this is always the way it is, but, like, talk about what's happened with your liver.
Well, I had Hep C twice,
Yeah.
um, and then got treated twice, and it went away both times because it's curable. But I was in stage two. I'm sorry, cirrhosis in
Yeah.
1998. I think that's when I found out I had Hep C the first time.
Mhm.
Um, so there's four stages of
Mhm.
cirrhosis, and fourth is obviously the worst, which didn't never really make sense to me because it means I like each stage usually takes about 10 years. So that means I had it for 20 years, or
Hmm.
I was just drinking while I had it. And anyway,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I had a lot of scarring, uh, got rid of the Hep C, got it again, got rid of it again. And my liver's pink and perfect.
Normal now.
Yeah, totally normal. Yeah, totally normal. Um, Everything's normal. My body in general is growing hair. back
Yeah, let's talk about the hair. We should talk
yeah.
about the hair for a second.
Well, like I said, I used to take my pants off and it would rip the skin off. So I mean, I didn't have hair on my legs um, at all, really. And even now, you
Mhm.
can kind of see where it's damaged, like the cell
Yeah,
tissue's damaged from it being elephantitis. Isn't that not a word? Big.
yeah.
um, so you can see where that is, and the hair doesn't grow on like a few patches.
Mhm.
But since I got healthy, like my legs are so hairy. My
They're
armpits
hairy,
are hairy.
but they're
It's
really
so
nice.
weird. My chest. It's so weird. Yeah. But I mean, my body's got energy to spare now, so it makes hair. I,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool to see, like, how your body is recovering physically, along with the other
It's
parts of
crazy.
recovery. Yeah, it's
It
really
really is. I think my hair's less gray.
yeah, yeah,
I do. I mean, my people have said that to me, and I do too. Like, it's just maybe it's just not as dull or
yeah,
something, but it just doesn't seem as gray to me.
yeah,
Um, I have a lot of broken bones. I've got, my neck is, I don't know if it's 5 or 6, but I'll have to look it up. But I've got a bunch of vertebrae starting, like, I think the C2 to the T6 or something like that. They're all fractured anyway down one side.
yeah,
I don't really know how that happened. Um, I found that out, when I went to get my hernia checked
yeah,
out. I knew I had one broken, um, when I went to just see why my neck was so crooked. And then they told me I only had one. And then when I went to get my hernia, they did more. And anyway,
yeah,
I messed my neck up pretty bad. So, I'm trying to straighten that out.
mhm,
My I feel a little bit hunched over. But for years I call it, doing the question mark or the number 7 on the streets, those people who are
leaned over and yeah,
leaned over into doing a number 7 or crouched
yeah,
down into a question mark. I mean,
yeah,
that was my natural
yeah,
uh, position for most of the day.
yeah,
And you see so many homeless people like that, and I'm not sure exactly what causes it. Probably poor diet. Um,
yeah,
the fact that you're nodding off all day, like maybe I don't know. I said when
yeah,
in that story I wrote that it's because you don't want to make eye contact with the rest of the people walking by, and that's actually true, but it's not,
yeah.
you know, that's
So
not why
let's,
it's
like,
happening.
let's segue that into because you just talked about the story that you wrote. Let's segue that into just, like, your because I think this is a big piece of your mental health, your
Hmm.
ability to focus, your creativity, your, there's also this may be connected to the emotional side of it too, just in terms of your emotional health, but your ability to actually talk about the things, share them both in your writing, which probably nobody listening to this podcast has had a chance to experience, but Jason's an
You,
amazing writer. Me,
yeah.
really, really good writer. Um, and obviously you're sharing those things on this podcast now too. Like that, does that feel like a surprise in recovery for you that you're doing those things?
No, no, it's not really a surprise that I'm doing them. It's a surprise that I'm sharing them. And I'm surprised that I'm able to do it. That's one of the reasons I decided to do the podcast because, you know, when I was on the street, and like this is no exaggeration, but every month, 2 people I know would die. Most people do not make it out, and they're usually dead before they're 30. So to get sober at 50 and still have a relatively healthy body and be able to form thoughts and express them clearly, I just think it's the only purpose I could possibly have for coming through it is to share my experiences with other people and, hopefully inspire them to do the same, or at least explain, like, educate their families on what's actually happening to them.
What would you say if someone's listening to this podcast right now and they are in like the very early stages of recovery? Maybe they've just made the decision, maybe they're about to make the decision, maybe they're in rehab or they're coming out of rehab. Like what would you say to those people if you could? which you can.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to think about it. Um, I wouldn't wanna just say one thing to them. I'd wanna hear what they had to say to me and then tell them, like, based on their own experiences what I think, but because I mean, me trying to tell someone who I know nothing about in early recovery, my experience isn't gonna be the same as theirs. I would really have to know the person. I do think everybody should know that, they can get sober and that life can be really incredible if you give it a chance, but it takes a lot of work. You have to really, really want to get sober. And I don't mean just stop using. I mean to like live a life that's fulfilling. Anyone can stop, not do any work on themselves and just be miserable and white knuckle it through the rest of their life being a dry drunk or, being resentful that they had to give up their drugs and can never use them again. And I know a lot of people like that. You're actually living a life and you have a goal of actually being sober and living, you're trying to not better yourself, but make your life better for yourself, then yeah, the longer you get away from it, the better for sure.
And just quickly, like I know you talked about this in a whole episode, and as you know, it's my favorite episode so far that you've done. The episode where you talked about the grief and the loss associated with leaving that life for you. Which, if you haven't listened to that episode and you're enjoying the other episodes of this podcast, go listen to that episode. It's very honest, and it really, really resonated for me. But I would just love to ask you, like, just I guess to just summarize that, because I think it's an for everybody, grief and loss is part of recovery, and a lot of people don't expect it to be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're using something to, comfort yourself or, cope, like, to let that go is of course, is gonna be grief. I mean, my entire life was centered around finding more drugs. Um, so I had to say goodbye to everyone I knew, the place I lived, and the drugs themselves, which, were my security blanket for 30 years. So to to uh to just like say goodbye to that and not expect to feel some sorrow is, it's just unreasonable because that person I was when I was high, who knew how to survive on the street, who knew um, kind of who to let in and who not to, and knew how to maneuver through that world. I had to completely change him, like get rid of him. Um, and that guy kept me alive. So
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, what I said to you after I listened to that podcast episode, and this is for anyone listening who for whom that feels scary. The parts that I love in Jason are the parts that were there when he was a kid, and they're all still there. So it feels like you have to like let go of everything, but you don't that's not really what's happening. Like I understand when you say that, like that's why I love that episode so much, because it just like makes such sense to me. And I felt, different but the same when I, got sober, and all of my friends kept drinking, and my husband at the time was still drinking, like everybody was drinking, and it had become part of my identity, really, and part of every activity. So I felt all of that, but I feel like now I'm the truest version of myself, really. Um, it's been a lot longer for me, but I really do feel like I have never been more authentic.
yeah, I mean, so basically, I mean, I guess I unveiled the person that I used to be by shedding all the rough, dirty skin that I had built up over the years, or knock down the walls, or whatever metaphor you want to use. But whatever it is, it's scary as hell. And and yeah, I mean, I still grieve. Um, I still agree with it sometimes, because there's no expectations, there's no planning, there's no rules. I could do whatever I want, whenever I wanted, within reason. And it's ridiculous to even say it because I couldn't do fucking anything. It's hard to describe,
Yeah.
It's not free, but it feels free because you can just go out there and do whatever you want, but you're not actually allowed to be a part of society. Like when COVID hit, I told you this, like nothing really changed for people on the street. We were never allowed inside. So
Yeah.
you guys weren't allowed outside. We weren't allowed inside.
Yeah.
Nothing really changed except when
Yeah.
it was -30 and there was no shelters. But other than that, COVID seemed like a bit of a vacation from other people. I didn't really even understand what was happening with COVID. It's really strange when I hear everybody and the trauma that it caused.
I find
I
that
got
so
more.
fascinating.
It gave the police more reasons to give us tickets because we didn't have masks on, but they didn't know when gave us masks. So
Oh my
I was
gosh.
supposed to wear them anyway.
That's making me think we need to do an episode on that whole tickets thing, because that tickets thing, oh my God, I could like monologue about the tickets to homeless people for a half an hour by myself, which nobody would want to hear, but it would be interesting to hear your side of it. Okay, so let's leave it on as positive a note as possible. Depending on who you ask, if you ask you're at about 20 months in your early recovery. If you ask me, you're at about almost 4 years in your early recovery.
I don't even know exactly because I don't count. I've never really liked the counting thing, and I understand why milestones are important and why it's part of a lot of programs, but
yeah, it's not for everybody.
Well, I've done it so many times. You know how many 90-day chips I've got?
Consecutively, you have about 20 months of sobriety now, and you have a couple of years of like mostly sobriety before that where you're working really hard at it.
Yep.
And that's amazing. It is amazing to everybody who knows you that you are where you are. Is it amazing to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought I'd be sober. I told my mother I was never going to be sober. At one point, I told her, this is how it is.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, am very grateful for your sobriety and for the hard work that you put into it, and for this podcast, and for your focus on leading a purposeful life, and having this podcast and the whatever outreach comes from it be part of that purpose for you. And I'm really, really proud of you. And as you know, and I hope that, this episode is helpful to somebody who's in early recovery. It gets better. It's hard work.
It gets hard work.
So much better. So much better.
It does.
And it's possible. It's absolutely possible. And whatever way works for you is A-okay in my book. And Jason's book, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't care how you get sober.
Yeah. So
at all. I don't care if you do I don't care if you do the steps or you do CBT or you just quit cold turkey. I don't care as long as it works.
As long as you're
happy.
Eventually happy. Yeah. Yeah. And you won't always be happy in early recovery. The early days of early recovery don't always feel happy, and it's okay to not feel happy. But it doesn't mean you're failing. It doesn't mean you're not going to feel happy someday. It's just part of the process of those early years for most of us, I think. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Let's wrap this sucker up.
Bye.